Dendrobium bigibum, Dendrobium phalaenopsis, Vapodes phalaenopsis, all different names for the same orchid. These are some of the most beautiful orchids you can find and some of the easiest growing. So let's have a look into what these can do for you and what you can do for them. Welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you are interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. So today we're just going to have a look at these amazing orchids, and we can see how big these flower spikes can get. They're some of the easiest to grow, some of the most adaptable orchids you can find, and they're often available in a lot of your hardware stores, grocery stores, places like that. So they're relatively easy to come by. And being such adaptable orchids, you can grow them indoors, you can grow them outdoors, and you can still get these magnificent flower displays. The reason that they are so adaptable is because they come from a variety of different altitudes. So this generally allows them to be more adaptable to different temperatures, different light conditions, and different humidities. Temperature is a big thing, as they have a very wide range of suitable temperatures compared to a lot of other orchids. They can take temperatures anywhere from around 10 degrees Celsius all the way up to the mid-30s. And that's what, 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And they adapt well in any of these conditions, as long as they're getting enough light. They are light-loving orchids, so the more light you can give them, the better. Preferably, if you can, at least some morning sun. And then midday, you can give them a little bit of shade between, what I mean by a little bit of shade is anywhere between 20% and 70% shade during those midday. So that's why they do so well indoors. If you can give them that nice, good sun in through the window up until about 11, half past 11 in the morning, and then they get shaded for the rest of the day, they still do it exquisitely well. And one of the reasons that you want to give them that little bit of shade during the midday, especially indoors, is you don't want the leaves to overheat. The leaves are relatively thin and can overheat if it's getting that full sun during the midday on hot days and there's no air movement. Air movement, if you're growing them outside, often will help keep the leaf temperatures down and not cause any damage. So the air movement is going to be important if you are giving them lots of sun during hot days. And if you're in the cooler climates and there's humidity and that coolness together, there's a few things that you just have to be aware of. For one, it's the watering. We want to avoid watering the leaves in those humid, cool climates and just watering the base, because in those humid, cool climates, that's where fungus likes to really attack, and it is quite susceptible to crown rot in those sorts of environments. So ensure you're managing to allow your orchid to dry out after watering, as they do prefer to get the similar sort of watering regime as what you would give to cattleyas. Lots of water and then allow them to dry out, and then only water again once they've dried out quite nicely. So that's one of the reasons we like to use a media that's very, very well aerated and got excellent drainage. Most often we like to put them into inorganic media such as lacquer or lava rock, anything that's going to allow that water just to rush straight through, but still have that humidity as the water evaporates, to give humidity to the plant. And we don't want to have excess water in these pots on those cool evenings. That cool, damp, wet roots is where you're going to start causing problems with your orchid. Your roots are just going to rot off and your plant isn't going to survive. Preferably morning watering is ideal, and then you allow it to dry out for the rest of the day. And remember, in those cooler climates, the moisture is going to stay longer in the pots, so you're going to be watering them less frequently. As the temperatures rise, so you'll be able to water them more frequently, because all that water will evaporate out and you'll be able to give them water again. And then again with feeding, if we've got them in inorganic media, there's no decomposing of organic matter to help feed the plant. So when we're feeding it, we're going to have to ensure that not only are we giving it a well-balanced fertilizer, but we're also going to have to make sure we've got all the micronutrients in it as well, because it's not getting any from the media itself. So it's going to have to absorb that through the fertilizer that you're giving it. If we are using a bit of organic media, just use something like a bark or something, nothing that's going to be holding too much moisture for too long. But again, if you're in those hotter climates where evaporation is going to take place a lot faster, then you may want to add more of that organic media into your mix so that your plant will have access to moisture for longer. And it all depends on the humidity of the environment that it's in as well. For the best manageable humidity levels, you're looking at between 50 and 60%, and these will still thrive really well. So that's another reason that they are such good indoor plants. Although it's quite difficult to use supplemental lighting for them with grow lights because of their size. So your grow lights have to be between 30 and 60 centimeters above your plant, but these can grow incredibly quickly and incredibly tall. So it makes it difficult to adjust your lighting to suit your plant. But that's not to say it can't be done. And also with these dendrobiums, one of the best things to do is to find the most ideal spot you can for them and leave them there and allow them to acclimatize. If you start moving them around too often, they're never going to get a chance to adapt to the position that you put them into. That's what's going to make it extremely difficult for you to get a good looking healthy plant. Also remember, they don't like to be disturbed too much. So we want to try and repot them as seldom as possible. That's another reason why we like to use that inorganic media, so that we can leave them in the same pot for between 3 to 5 years. And you don't have to worry about your plant overgrowing its pot, because they do tend to flower better when they've been squeezed into a tight little area. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't pot them into a bigger pot. It is going to take a while for the root to grow up and full before we actually start getting that major top growth. Whereas if we've got it in a tighter pot, often we land up with more top growth faster. Also, talking about growth and fertilization, we don't want to necessarily be feeding these with high nitrogen fertilizers all the time. Especially during those colder periods, we want to ensure that our nitrogen content is lower so that we're not forcing too much top growth. The top growth is going to be heavy for one and cause the plant to topple. But also, we don't want the top growth to outgrow the root capacity. Keep with a nice balanced fertilizer, because other than forcing that top growth, you're also going to start having a problem with burning those tender root tips of these dendrobiums, because that nitrogen can build up and cause root burn. Also, these dendrobiums do not go through a rest period. If we're giving them the ideal conditions, they'll be in active growth throughout the year. And with that active growth, we can get flowers at just about any time of year, although most often autumn is their biggest flowering period. If they do come across those colder temperatures with lower humidities, they will slow down their growth, almost coming to an almost dormant state. But that just means we must then reduce our watering and our feeding so that the plant can then cope with that situation. But if we can give it the warmth and humidity and light it needs, it's just going to keep booming throughout the year. And we've seen on a lot of these dendrobiums, we'll land up with kikis, especially at these leaf nodes. This is where the kikis will form, and generally, if we are getting a large amount of kikis forming on your plant, what it does do, it causes leaf drop. So that cane will generally lose all its leaves, and it could possibly even drain that whole cane. And if you are having massive amounts of kikis growing on your plant, what may even happen is your mother plant itself may die and allow these kikis to then take over. So to avoid that, you might want to just make sure you remove the kikis when they have enough root volume. But remember, we don't want to remove these old canes. These old canes, even though they have lost all their leaves, can still produce flowers. All of the canes on your plant, once they mature, do have flowering potential. And as we can see with this specific plant, how many flower spikes it had off its previous flowering. As your initial plant starts, you may only get between 3 and 5 flowers on a single flowering spike, but as they mature and grow, we can see how big and long these flower spikes can get. Anything up to 20. This one particularly has 32 flowers on a single flowering spike. And you can land up with multiple flower spikes on a single cane, and if you've got multiple canes, you'll land up with this huge big display. So these are really some of the most rewarding orchids you can grow. If you are having difficulty with them, generally the majority of the time it's going to be from overwatering or incorrect watering, watering at the wrong times, or low humidities and not enough sunlight. Other than that, these are generally some of the easiest orchids that you can grow. So again, with the kiki development on your Dendrobium phalaenopsis, if you're getting a large amount of the kikis growing, you know it's generally a cultural problem that you're having. You're not looking after your orchid correctly, and it's finding another way to survive. So if you're seeing that, you know to look at your plant, check its roots, see what you're doing wrong and fix it so that you can help your orchid survive. It's an early sign that will help you save your orchid. And other things that you need to watch out for on these dendrobiums, other than those fungal attacks that can happen, especially in those humid, cooler climates, is spider mite. Spider mite can be quite devastating on these. They can really destroy your leaves and leave your plant terribly sickly and bring other diseases in with them. And slugs and snails. Slugs and snails love the flower spikes. So they'll come up and find your flower spike as it's beginning to develop and munch it all the way back to the base. And another thing that they particularly like are those dormant buds that are in and around the base of the pseudobulbs that form the new canes. They'll chomp those off right to the bone and leave your canes unable to produce new growth. And with your media being so open, with those air spaces, they like to hide inside the pots, which make them difficult to find. So keep an eye out for those slugs and snails because they can really damage your plant. Also, in certain areas, Dendrobium beetle. Their larvae will drill holes straight into your canes and make it difficult for you to get rid of them, and they multiply up so quickly. They'll chomp through your leaves, through your flower spikes, through anything. So keep an eye open for those. And these Dendrobium phalaenopsis are particularly wonderful for growing outdoors if you are in the right climate. With that broad spectrum allows you to grow them in a wide variety of different climates, and you can grow them outside by the pool in big containers out in the full open glaring sun. And the air movement outside is generally enough so that the sun isn't going to boil the leaves, and growing them out like that will generally grow them to great big sizes with humongous flower spikes all over the show. Some of them can be in flower almost all year round. So just like the joy that an epidendrum can bring, the Dendrobium phalaenopsis can do just about the same. Another good area is growing them in pots underneath palm trees, where all they're going to do is get shade from the midday sun, and they'll get sun in the morning and in the afternoon, and they'll just love it. One of the biggest things for not having flowering Dendrobium phalaenopsis is light requirements. The more light and sun you can give them, the more likely you're going to be to get flowers out of them. So just by understanding that their roots are particularly well adapted to being epiphytic, that they'll rot easily if they're kept wet for too long, and understanding that they need lots and lots of light, and they only need an average humidity of between 50 and 60% for success. If you do have higher humidities, all the better, but that's what makes them so successful is indoor flowering orchids too. Because often indoors, it's difficult to keep your humidity levels above 60%. And if you are able to, sometimes it starts causing problem with mold in the house. So this makes these orchids particularly attractive to indoor growers. So with your flower spike lasting anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, and with all the multiple flower spikes that you're going to get, and the little amount of effort that you need to put in to get them, these are some of the most rewarding orchids to have. And remember, don't be afraid of these kikis. Although they're giving you a warning, you now have multiple plants that you can then pot up and either get bigger specimens if you put them all together, or hand them on to your friends and they'll love you forever. But remember then to check why your plant is producing all these little kikis. We are continually posting new information up on that Buy Me a Coffee link down below, and we really do appreciate anyone who considers becoming a member. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.